Matthew 18.
Matthew chapter 17, verses 24 through 27.
24 through 27.
Yes. Struggle trying how to tag this, but it's a major component of this is what Jesus is doing is set up an ethic for his really going to say an ethic for a temple community. And so we're going to look at that in all of its challenges and details. But this is I probably will check. This is a temple community ethic, and there's some important dynamics going on here. So let me just read this. Matthew 17, 24 through 27. And when they had come to Capernaum, those who collected the 2 drachma tax came to Peter and said, "Does your teacher not pay the 2 drachma tax?" He said, "Yes." When he came into the house, Jesus spoke to him first, saying, "What do you think, Simon? From whom do the kings of earth collect customs or poll tax? From their sons or from strangers?" Upon his saying, "From strangers," Jesus said to him, "Consequently, the sons are exempt. But lest we give them offense or go to the sea, throw in a hook, take the first fish that comes up. When you open his mouth, you'll find a satyr. Take that, give it to them for you and me." And that's how it ends. So let's see if we can dive into it. Rev has kind of set the tone for last week. Verse 24. Capernaum. This is Peter's home. This is Peter's hometown as well as Jesus' hometown. And the people who collect the double drachma tax, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, they ask a question, and really, in some cases, the New American Standard may send the wrong idea. Sit down, Cameron. May send the wrong idea in its translation, because it in the Greek here, it expects a yes answer. It's one of those rhetorical questions in Greek that expects a yes answer. So we probably should understand it. The question would be something along the lines: your teacher pays the 2 drachma tax, doesn't he? Now, here's the thing. That would have a couple of different reasons. There could be a couple of reasons that the question is asked this way. On one level, it could be asked as a way of just giving Jesus the benefit of the doubt. We know you pay the taxes. We know you pay the temple tax. Another element, I think it's probably more likely, is not to give Jesus the benefit of the doubt, but it's to kind of create social pressure on him. Like, I know you gonna pay it, right? Right. It'd be kind of like, I was thinking about an analogy, but it would be like when there's something controversial and you kind of want to put social pressure on certain people of not being controversial. So imagine during a time where Kaepernick is kneeling during the time of the flag, right? The Pledge to Allegiance. Now, for the latter couple of years, now it became like it was like popular to do it. Like, I love LeBron and I love all them, but the LeBron James and them wasn't talking about Black Lives Matter and all that stuff when it was controversial. Right. The only ones who were doing it when it was controversial was Kaepernick and then the WNBA. The WNBA was doing it even when it was controversial. Right. But but imagine like during that time, like when it was controversial, like one of the general managers coming to say, like, I know you're not like one of those people, right? You're not gonna kneel, are you? Like I know you're not gonna.
I know you ain't gonna kneel.
I know you ain't gonna kneel, right? And so that's kind of the dynamic here. That it is there's a controversy. So let me see if I can kind of, and it's a lot going on here. But let me see if I can kind of distill the controversy down. So on the basis of Nehemiah 10, 32, 33, and Exodus 30, 12 through 16, there was a custom that became a current, and was also defended that you pay a temple tax. Now, in Exodus, it's a lot. That's what it says. There's a lot going on. So in Exodus 30, 12 through 16, first of all, the tax was only for males, and within a certain age. And in Exodus, this is real controversial context because they are to give it for atonement. At least one of the translations, some of the translations talk about giving it for atonement. And which is, I just don't have time to get into all of that. But the other thing, but part of the atonement aspect, there seems to be this aspect of they need to pay or do this offering in some sense to be in God's good graces. And it's just really, oh my goodness, if I had time, I would deal with it. But here's a component. And that part can come back later. The point is that the custom is still in play or has been solidified by Jesus by the time that Jesus comes. Here's the thing, though. Obviously, everybody's not paying it, right? This is why they ask the question. Like, this is why the question is even relevant. Everybody's not paying the tax, and there's a couple of reasons for this. So, on one level, the priests didn't, because the priests were exempt from this temple tax, this temple offering, or whatever you want to. They were exempt from it. So then rabbis and would say, well, we are exempt from it too. We and the priests. So the priests, some of them that didn't pay it because of that. Then you had some Jewish people who didn't pay it because, well, we already paying enough taxes. We got to pay taxes to Rome, and then every time I turn around, y'all at the temple asking for money, right? So you had some Jewish folks who did not pay it. Now here's the thing: to not pay it also meant, in some Jewish circles, that you were not you wasn't an active Jewish member. Like you wasn't a participant. Like, your tithes ain't up to date. So there was a level where that was also used to kind of signify, like, are you really all for the temple? Now here's the thing: part of that temple tax was also for a corporate offering that would go towards poor people, goes toward helping the Jewish community and stuff like that. So in one level, you can see how it would turn into, oh, you don't care nothing about the Jewish community. You ain't paying. This is going for all of us.
Right.
Everybody with me so far?
Yeah.
So you got that dynamic where some people didn't pay it because, well, I'm a priest, I'm a rabbi, et cetera, I don't have to pay it. Then some people didn't pay it because, well, we already paying 40%, 30%, whatever to Caesar. Now you want to turn around and ask for some money, right? So listen, that dynamic wasn't invented just in our day. You had people in that day thinking like that too.
Right.
And then the other one, and probably even more so, it's probably even more important. Not everyone agreed that such a tax was mandated by law. Again, I'm going to come back to this element of it on another day. But the Old Testament passage was controversial even among Jews, and not everybody thought that it was something to be mandated. In fact, for some people, it's like in Qumran with the Dead Sea Scroll community. In Qumran, we find out when they appropriate this, they it's only something that has to be, that only should be paid once a year. I mean, not once a year, once in a lifetime. Once in a, that you pay this once, you don't have to pay this all over again. Mm-hmm. So we have evidence, and this is the fourth Qumran cave, 159 document. We see that. So again, it was a controversial thing even before Jesus' time, and then it remains to be controversial during Jesus' time.
Right.
So again, some priests, some religious leaders didn't pay it. Some laity didn't pay it because they thought that it was, like it's not even clear we have to pay this thing. And again, this is probably then compounded by the fact that, and we're going to see this in chapter 22 when we have another conversation about a tax to Caesar, right?
Yeah.
Where you already have all of these taxes. Like every time I turn around, I mean, it's one thing for you know how people are. It's one thing for the world to do, but then the church come and turn around and got to pay this tax, right? And of course, they're not the church; they're the synagogue. But so this is all what's going on. So this is the controversy. So on one level, the implications is this: is Jesus a Jewish person who is in support of Judaism? And Jesus has already gotten in trouble for a lot of stuff, right? Like he's already getting in trouble for not following certain things. In fact, we chapter 15, Nicholas said, why don't you and your disciples fast and follow the traditions of the elders? So they already got a reputation of not being totally in line with Judaism, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So on one level, the question is intended to be a measuring rod of how Jewish is Jesus.
Mm.
Right? On the other thing is also kind of trying to figure out, related to that, are you one of these defectors? Are you one of these people, you ain't involved? Like, where are you stand? And so what's interesting about this is that, again, they asked the question to expect a yes answer. And again, it's probably for social person. Like, I know your rabbi paid, right? Soon they came to Capernaum. It's like it's like they're at the city gates or something. They got the offering basket. Like, you got your temple tax, right?
Right.
And interestingly, and Peter, without any reservation, without any inhibitions, immediately say, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? On one level, there's a level where Peter understands, in Matthew 2, as he's telling, as Rev said, he's the only one that tells this story. Remember, one of the things that Matthew's trying to show is that Jesus is Jewish, right? He and so Peter was like, yeah, absolutely. This could be on account of a couple of reasons. It could be that he is accustomed to seeing Jesus doing this, or secondly, he's just making an inference based off of kind of what he knows about Jesus. I think it's the latter. Mm-hmm. Here's why. Because it seems like there would be no reason for Jesus to make a lesson about this if he's been doing it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But so of course they've been gone, right? They've been gone. They've been on the circuit, and now they've come back home, and they listen. It's time for us to send the temple offering to the temple. We got to send it to Jerusalem. So come on, what's up? And so this becomes an opportunity. So on one level, even Peter's like, yeah, like Jesus is Jewish. He ain't, he's in line with Judaism. Matthew is going to tell it and to piggyback on that a little bit more. So here's the thing. So then we have Jesus. We have the initial question. We have Peter's response, and then we have Jesus's lesson, where the meat of the passage is. So Jesus asked the question. He said, verse 25 said yes, and then when he came into the house, Jesus spoke to him first. So Jesus initiates the conversation. He says, Simon, what do you think? What do you think? From whom do the kings of the earth collect customs or poll tax? From their sons or from strangers? And upon him saying from strangers, Jesus said to him, consequently, the sons are exempt. So there's a couple of things here. Who are the sons of the king? Who are the sons in this regard? So, well, if on a very literal level, the sons could be the royal household, right? It could be his sons. On a very literal level, the king doesn't make people in his household pay taxes.
Right.
Right. The other option is the sons are just the citizens of the kingdom, right? So people who are under his citizens versus the subjugated people. So Roman citizens, in this case, don't pay taxes, but people that Romans have conquered would pay.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So, and I think both of them may be at play here because Matthew has courses. Matthew points to Jesus. Jesus is the son, and if the temple tax, I don't think it does have to deal with Rome. And this is what Rev was saying in that regard. It's not political in that regard, right? That it's not because the temple. There are taxes that they have to pay to Rome, and there are going to be taxes that they will have to pay to Rome through the temple. But this doesn't seem to be that, based off the language there. Because one definition, one argument for that is, it ain't the tax collector that is collecting it, right?
Right.
The tax collectors are the one that collected the taxes, and the publicans. These are the ones that collected the taxes for Rome, and sometimes that came through the temple. But these are just like some Jewish people, like Capernaum folks, right? And they're like, hey, it's time to send the money to the temple. So that seems to be that this is not specifically geared to the Roman tax, but the temple tax of Judaism. So here's the thing, though. So then that means the king is not Caesar. The king has to be the one who's over the temple, which would be God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now here's the thing. There is a political component to other Jewish people, though. Not towards Rome, but there's a political component towards other Jewish leaders, right, and maybe even Judaism. And we're gonna get to that in a minute. So watch this. So the implications is huge. If the son, he says earlier, who pays the tax? Is it sons or strangers? And Peter says strangers. And he said, consequently, the sons are exempt. But lest we give them offense, which means then, who are the sons? Who's the sons here?
Jesus and the disciples, right?
Jesus and his disciples. He says, lest we give them offense. So Jesus, first and foremost, is the Son.
Right. Right.
He is, and of course, Matthew says this. At his baptism, he says this. The demons say this. Over and over, he is referred to as the Son of God.
Right.
So watch this. Jesus is exempt. Why would remember the question starts about does Jesus pay? Does your teacher pay? And Jesus says, well, he asked the question. He said, listen, he said, Peter, hurry up, come in here, hurry up, close the door. And he asked, who pays taxes? This is the sons of the strangers. He said the strangers. And he says, who do the kings exact the taxes? From their sons or from strangers? He said, yeah, from strangers. He says, yeah, absolutely. And he says, and that's why the sons are exempt. And so since the initial conversation was about him, Jesus is the son. He doesn't have to pay the temple tax because he's a son. And so this reveals him. This is where it starts to gets kind of has to be a statement against the Jewish folks, because who is the Jewish speaking, and speaking in Judaism, who's the like quintessential king in Judaism?
David.
David is the quintessential king. In fact, 2 Samuel 7 talks about how I think we talked about that in Resurrection Sunday or one of them days, and we talked about that. But he's going to raise up a seed, right? So David is the quintessential king. And so if he is the son, it is a way of saying he is also the son of David.
Right.
Yeah. But over the temple, God is king over the temple. So this is not only a thing that he is the messianic son of David, but he is also the divine son of God.
Right.
Yeah. So he's exempt. He's exempt from that. And here's the interesting thing. Then he says, but lest we give them offense, go to the sea, throw in a hook, take the first fish that comes up, and when you come out its mouth, you'll find a satyr, take that, give it to them for you and me. And here's what the miracle does. This is a kind of outlier miracle. Usually miracles that Jesus does is usually to provide or meet a need specifically, but this is one of those miracles, probably like the miracle of of John chapter 2, although John chapter 2's miracle did meet a need, and arguably this one did too. It's one of those miracles where it's the heavy focus. All Jesus' miracles are messianic. They point to him. They're signs to his status. But this one is tilted heavily in that direction, because if God, the divine king, does not require his son to pay the tax, this miracle then is an illustration of God providing. He doesn't have to pay the tax, and so God provides for him, so that so he don't have to go. No, he don't have to go work for it or whatever. It's like God has already provided this for him. And for Peter, he says, go pay one for me and you. And so it serves to to confirm his status as son, as well as Peter's status as sons. If sons are the king's people, the citizens of the kingdom versus the subjugated people, then this is, you're talking about instigating. This is a text that is extremely they are antagonizing, because what is the implication here? The implication is that Jesus and his followers, as Sister Dina said, are the sons.
Mm-hmm.
The other people are the strangers.
Strangers, yeah.
Who are the strangers then?
Those that do not believe, or those that are not part of Jesus' followers.
Other Jewish people who pay the temple tax.
Mm-hmm.
Followers, they are the strangers. This is, and you're talking about antagonistic. And it's interesting that Matthew, as Rebbe said, is the only one who records this. And it's interesting because he wants to show that Jesus is part of Judaism. Jesus is, he come to fulfill the law, not to destroy it. Matthew says that, right? Chapter 5. But this is saying, listen, y'all kind of using this to talk about, we're talking about, how it would turn into, are you really for, because the offering is kind of taken up for the Jewish community.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a sign of your Jewishness.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus says, no, y'all ain't really, y'all measuring rod of Jewishness is really, it's defective. Y'all ain't really the Jewish. Y'all ain't the sons. The people, because I'm the son, those who follow me are the sons. Y'all are strangers. Y'all are Gentiles.
Ooh.
It is. Yeah, you are strangers to this covenant. You're strangers to this thing.
Wow.
It is extremely antagonistic.
Yeah, you call them out their name.
We call them out. Y'all ain't sons. We are sons.
Ooh.
Yeah, and so watch this. Then of course the implications is huge. Then the true Judaism, true Israelite is to be with Jesus. That is the true Israelite. That's to be Israelite. Now watch this. So he says, but as to not offend them, and this is where it gets even just a very interesting passage for us, or an application. Not to offend them. Who are the them? A couple of different options, but we probably just likely just all the Judaism, all of those who are not his followers, all the Jewish people who are not his followers, who are paying this. So, because again, not everybody ain't paying the temple tax, but the Jews who are paying the temple tax, is probably them who's not his followers. He says, so as to not to offend them. This is a huge lesson. On one level, Jesus is saying, my followers, because remember what he says earlier? So remember, so right here he says, no, he's exempt from paying the taxes, and all of his followers are exempt too. Remember in Matthew 12, there is something that Matthew has, that only Matthew has, which is this statement that Jesus says, something greater than the temple is here. Right. Okay. And so this is the formation of a new temple community. When we get to Paul and we get to others, he'll say, don't you know that y'all are the temple, right? Because you know that not you personally, but the body of Christ, right? Temple of the Lord. And so you get this kind of beginning concept. It really starts with Mark, who's the first gospel writer to write. It starts with this formation of if Jesus is greater than the temple and something is greater than the temple, he is the temple. He is the place. He is where God's special presence abides. And so all those who are connected to him become part of the temple community. And so one of the things we're doing here, so as not to offend them, this is the beginning of what Paul would describe as Christian liberty.
Yeah.
Okay.
In Galatians, Paul would talk about we are the law of Christ and liberty. Some things we're not obligated to do. We are liberty. We don't have to do these things. We don't we don't have to fear condemnation. And he talks about like eating meat. We have the law of liberty. We don't have to. We are at liberty to do only what God has, what Jesus has demanded of us, and then when there's a toss up, we are at liberty to follow our conscience, to follow Jesus, right? And so, but all this is about Christian liberty, where we are free to do some of the restraints that this is the beginning of that. And so, Jesus doesn't pay out of obligation. He doesn't even pay really out of loyalty to the temple. He pays not to cause an offense. So he has the liberty, but this is the beginning of don't let your liberty cause somebody to stumble.
Yeah. Yeah.
Say that again, Pastor.
Don't let
your liberty cause
someone to stumble.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the beginning of that we will see in Paul, 1 Corinthians 8. I'm free to eat meat. It ain't nothing wrong with me. It ain't nothing taboo about it. Even if it comes from idols, we know ain't no such thing as an idol. But don't let your liberty become an offense to your brother. Right? This is the beginning of that. Jesus and so watch this. This is going to be important because the next chapter he's going to talk about forgiveness and stuff like that, and how to deal with offenses. Here's the interesting thing. Jesus says, so as not to cause an offense to them, but in Matthew 15:17, he definitely calls an offense to the Pharisees. And the disciples say that. They say, hey, they didn't like, the Pharisees didn't like that. They were offended when you said that. That's it. Some things, because of the weight of it, we will cause offense to people, right? God told us to do it. It's the command of it, and it's hey, it's going to offend people, and we're not trying to offend. We're trying to be faithful to our God. But hey, if that offends you, that's kind of your problem. This is kind of what Jesus says in Matthew 15. That's like, hey, the Pharisees didn't like that when you said that. Hey, and this is a so when truth offends people, when our obligations to God offend people, well, that's your problem.
Okay.
You don't have to tiptoe around that. But there are some things that are really not weighty issues. There are things sometimes that are like the eating of meat, right? That's one of the illustrations. Sometimes of Christian liberty, Christian conscience. For some people, getting drunk is a sin. I mean, well, getting drunk is a sin. For some people, drinking alcohol in general is a sin.
It's a sin.
Right? And that's a Christian liberty issue. And so because I have liberty, it's not a sin. But if you think it's a sin, well, it's definitely a sin for you if you think it's a sin. But I also need to be careful not to offend you unnecessarily just because I have the liberty to do so.
Right. Okay.
And that, I'm gonna tell you, actually, I might get in trouble with saying this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I think we're going to have continued conversations about this when it comes to marijuana.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, some people. I've never really. I'm kind of outside the box. I've never really bought into the whole idea that weed and marijuana was intrinsic evil. I've never smoked it myself, but I've never bought into it. It was intrinsically evil. I've always first of all, just like studying different cultures and different stuff like that. I said, there could be some sinful implications to it, like like it's selling it and the gang wars and all that. So I can understand some of the dynamics of the war on drugs elements component and some of the legal components. So anything that in that regards it can be seen. But as far as it intrinsically being evil, and then so imagine my surprise when now, after years of me thinking that, now it's like, oh, it ain't intrinsically evil anymore. Now that the government can make money off of it,
Right.
Anymore, right? We found out it has medicinal purposes, which I've always knew, because Native Americans use it in that way. So now it's like, oh, it's so it's going to be. I think interestingly, this is going to be a conversation that we'll have with marijuana because I think it has been stigmatized so badly in our neighborhoods that when we think of it, it's hard for some people to separate that from its criminal components. And truthfully, that was the same thing that was with alcohol. Right, the same thing was with alcohol in the 1800s or whatever that was the prohibition was. Right after the prohibition was lifted, people had that same type of dynamic. Now people don't even. It's like whatever, So, but that's going to be that'll be probably something that the church community will be having conversations about in future decades.
Mm-hmm. Is that kind of like do it in moderation?
We talk about that. Do things in moderation.
If it's not a sin specifically, but if you overdo it, it can be a sin or cause health issues. Absolutely. So in that case, you're supposed to do it in moderation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think that would be a good analogy for that. So, of course, though, there's all kind of different dynamics, though, because of whatever. But but the thing is liberty, the law of liberty. Just because Paul says all things are lawful to me, but not all things are expedient. And so here we have an illustration where Jesus seems to be saying to the Christian community and giving an example, we don't have to be unnecessarily offensive to our Jewish brothers. Yeah. Right. And so as not to offend them, here's mine in yours. I'm obligated to do that. And this is going to be, of course, one of the things that's going to be a very important dynamic of the Christian community is that how do they relate to Judaism? Their break from Judaism. And in some cases, Judaism are going to sever the tie themselves when they started persecuting and killing Christians. And of course, Paul is going to be one of the biggest ones to do that, right? So it'd be interesting that Paul will come around and then be one of the biggest people to talk about the law of liberty. Yeah. So in a nutshell, this is an ethic, I think, of the temple community. The conversation is about paying temple tax, but Jesus' status as one who's greater than the temple, which and as a son of the king, right? If he's a son of the king, then he's in this case he's a Davidic son as well as a divine son. But if we consider Matthew 12, where something greater than the temple is here, the only thing greater than temple is God in the flesh. And so this is provocative in that regard, but it's also setting forth an example and an ethic for the how the Christian community, the Christian Jewish community, are to engage with the Jewish community, and the implications. The principle is clear. Sometimes the challenge for us is how to distinguish that in practice. And that's why I said we're probably going to be having future conversations. The Christian community will be on other things. But I'll say this also, there's also a greater ethic of sometimes as Christians today, we are oftentimes known for what we are offended by.
True.
What we go against. And in some cases, that oftentimes that is used as a measuring rod of your authentic Christianity. If you're not against abortion, if you're not against homosexuality, if you're not against, and we are against these things, yes. But we have to be careful that we don't make that, like what we are offended by, our measuring rod, because part of there is an ethic, and it's not a black and white issue. It's this wisdom and discernment and prayer has to be used in various different situations. And I'll tell you what I mean by that in a minute, but let me give you the principle. The principle, though, is that we should have some concern or not unnecessarily offending people.
Right.
So let me give you some examples and give you some things, and then we'll close out here. Obviously, we are against homosexuality in the LGBTQIAP community. Their stance on stuff in many ways forces our hand, because the stance is kind of like, well, it ain't a sin. Why can't you just accept us? Why are y'all so homophobic? Like, so once they make those type of remarks, now we got to double down, right? So on one level, it's kind of like, hey, they say, when people say, hey, you really offended the Pharisees. Well, hey, So on one level, we can double down and not be overly sensitive to the fact that people are offended based off of our spiritual convictions. On the other hand, though, we don't have to make offending people our mantra. It don't have to be like that's what we wake up to do. Mm-hmm. Right? And so then we have to figure out ways of how we could affirm the humanity. Like, listen, I do think Christians ought to. I've said this before. This ain't nothing new I've said, but we ought to be the biggest. We ought to be the ones leading in making sure that LGBTQ gets civil rights and human rights. Of course, again, some of the problem is they've made some issues civil rights issues in the sense of they made it like human stuff. Again, like you can't even disagree with me, right? Like they make that like a civil issue. But no, they should get equal pay. Like we should be pushing for that. We should be pushing. They get health care. I don't care who you see. What you ought to have ample health care and all that, right? Like we shouldn't. Obviously, we don't want nobody doing violence against them. They should be discriminated on the job. Like that stuff, we should be pushing for them and should be
human rights.
Right? Human rights. And of course it goes into all kind of other stuff, and I can give other examples. But the thing is, this is that the interesting ethic is we have to. It's not always a black and white issue, but one of the ethics is clear though, is that we don't necessarily have to needlessly offend people just to show our Christianity. And this is what they're doing. So Jesus wasn't obligated to do it. And he didn't do it out of loyalty to the temple. He's about to later on. He's going to denounce the temple and pronounce judgment on it. But it was an ethic, and it was an ethic that he wanted them to really wrap their minds around. And he's not finished with it. In chapter 18, he's going to talk about offenses and forgiveness and all this kind of different stuff. And this is a major component. So it's an interesting passage. It reveals, it's very antagonistic in the sense that Jesus and his followers are considered the sons, while other Jewish people who don't follow him are considered strangers. Like, that's, you talk about, you always want to say to Matthew, hey, I thought you wanted to show how Jewish Jesus is. Now you like getting him in trouble, you know. It's a reference to his messianic status, about when you understand sonship, and he's the Davidic son and the divine son, and it has implications for the church. And so this is still a lot there. I don't some other day I'm gonna come back and deal with some of the other things, but that's a major component of what's going on there. So
Amen.
Man.
All right.
Yeah.